I thought about opening with me singing, you know, Hooked on a Feeling, or maybe The Chain by Fleetwood Mac, which has been in a lot of the marketing, but you don't want to hear me sing. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So, I have seen it. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers. I am going to want to talk about them eventually, but I'll throw up a spoiler warning before I get there. Hopefully I don't get too wrapped up that I drop spoilers before I mean to. Anyways, short version, getting right to the point. It's good. It's very good. It's a lot of fun, which is exactly what I want out of Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm kind of in my head going back and forth whether or not I think it's better than, well, no, whether it's as good as the first one. I don't think it's better. I think the strengths of each one vary slightly. I think on balance it might be as good, trying to be objective about it. What sort of the knock it has against it is it's not as new. So it doesn't feel quite as fresh. There wasn't really a way around that though. It's a sequel. Unless it takes a totally different direction. Sequels generally, you know, lack that newness. And, you know, this franchise is already different enough from, you know, Marvel movies and superhero movies, blockbuster movies in general. It is bizarre enough and weird enough. It doesn't need to be diverging from itself. It can just be, you know, the weird franchise that it is. And it lives up to that. So, like I said, comparing to the first one, I think the story is probably not as strong. I think the first one had a stronger story through line. I think this one has higher emotional levels for some of the characters and is funnier. So, sort of, again, that's why I'm kind of thinking on balance, they're probably on even footing, although the strengths of one are different from the strengths of the other. But, you know, these characters, they're back, they're fun, they're funny, and the humor is kind of amped up here, but not just in a cheap, you know, oh, insert more jokes way, like in a way that I'm not sure too many writer-directors, aside from James Gunn, could have pulled it off, because this movie will whip back and forth from, you know, a tense action scene to a pretty heavy emotional moment to a raucous joke within the same scene, and you don't get tonal whiplash. You are able to roll with it. Part of it, I think, is the sequel benefit. Now that we have a grasp on these characters, it can do those sorts of shifts a little bit more rapid pace than used to be done even in the previous one. All the returning characters are great, and they're all good for pretty much the same reasons. Drax seems to have loosened up a little bit, so he's not, you know, buried under, you know, the loss of his family, although the film hasn't forgotten that either. He gets some nice moments in relation to that. Groot is a little bit different because Baby Groot kind of, you know, they play up his immaturity, and so he is functioning a little bit different. Other than that, the characters come back and do what we know that they're good at, and they remain good at all those things. And that's true of even the more supporting characters that cross over, like Nebula, Yondu, and some of these characters I'm going to talk more about once I get into spoilers, because some of them have things that really specifically that I liked a lot, but I don't want to ruin things for people who want to go in blind. In terms of new characters, we've got Mantis, who is fun and funny, although in some ways she feels a little bit, not redundant, but she feels a little bit similar to Drax, you know, in terms of not quite connecting properly with the other characters. It's for different reasons and it's in a different way, but that is, it feels like a little bit of a repeat of that kind of general dynamic. And then we've also got Kurt Russell appearing as Peter Quill, Star-Lord's father. And I feel okay saying that because that much has been shown in trailers. And Kurt Russell is Kurt Russell's Kurt Russell. I mean, that's basically what he was hired to do. Just come in and be cool and chill and kind of groovy. And he's cool and chill and kind of groovy. So, you know, he's doing exactly what needs to be done pretty well. I feel like this one has really embraced the craziness of that should come out of doing anything that is linked to Marvel Cosmic canon. It should be nuts. And this is nuts. More nuts than I think the first one was. I think the craziest thing that probably went on in the first one, aside from, you know, a raccoon and a tree, was like the civilization inside the head of, you know, some giant lost ancient being. Something like that would be really mundane in this particular movie. So it's really leaning in and embracing the craziness that this property and this franchise brings. And I found it just to be a whole lot of fun, which is what I thought about the first one. It was a whole lot of fun. And there are some surprisingly touching moments. There are tons of funny moments. The action is good and inventive, and it was good. I enjoyed it. Now I'm going to talk about some spoiler stuff. So, some things in particular that I really liked. So, we knew that Kurt Russell was Peter Quill's father, and anyone who was really paying attention to the information that was coming out also knew that Kurt Russell was playing Ego the Living Planet. The way that works is he's playing sort of an extension and avatar of Ego. We do actually see the planet, and yes, you do get to see a giant face on the planet. That made me so happy. But anyway, I was slightly nervous about this, not just because it's Ego, but because sort of since that first one is like, oh, you know, the implication that his father was an alien, was something extraterrestrial. That was a thread I wasn't particularly excited to see played out because it leans too close to a destiny narrative in my mind. It makes him, you know, he's destined for greater things, and, you know, because it's in his blood and it's how he was born, and it's, you know, that's not the worst thing in the world, but it's so played out at this point. I want more characters who they just happen to be the guy who's there. They weren't destined for this, so I wasn't too excited to see that played out, but it plays pretty well. And a big part of why it plays pretty well is that by the time the movie ends, it makes it very clear that what makes him special is his human half, not his celestial half. And that is made really, really clear and really explicit. And also, because in this we sort of get, you know, things like, well, because he is half celestial, that's, you know, Ego is a celestial. Because he is half celestial, he can do these amazing things, and they remove that by the end. So that I'm glad for, because I want him to be the human in the group. I don't want him to suddenly have superpowers. He doesn't need them. So I'm glad that that got addressed, removed, and it didn't diminish the character in any way, because it goes, look, here's this whole thing about himself he didn't know about. And that's fine, because it's not what makes him special anyways. I like that little mini arc that he goes through. That said, anyone who's familiar with sort of a lot of the tropes of these kinds of storytelling of, you know, a character meeting somebody who's like, oh, let me just show you how everything is. Well, what's the duh thing? Well, that person's manipulating them. They've got their own agenda, and that's exactly what's going on. And there is that lull in the middle a little bit, and part of it is related to just, it's not hard to figure out that Ego is going to end up being the big villain by the end of it. Now, watching it play out, it plays out pretty well, but I would say that I figured that out early, except that I'm not sure the film actually tries very hard to hide it. I think James Gunn knew that he wasn't breaking any particular new ground with that particular story twist, but yet still left the structure in place of somebody who was trying to play it like a twist. So I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what to think about that. Some other emotional things. Yondu, some really good, you know, you get some good surrogate father stuff there. Michael Rooker gets a lot of great moments and some really good bonding with Rocket. I got surprising, potent, just background and understanding of Nebula. Like, I liked Nebula the first time, and that was largely just because of Karen Gillan's presence. I mean, I liked her from Doctor Who, but she brought a great menace and anger to that character, and I liked her as a presence. And in this one, to get a sense of why she is like this, and to get some specifics of her backstory, it hits kind of hard, and I wasn't expecting that from her. And nice surprise. I enjoyed that. I think those were I could talk more spoiler stuff. Those were the main two spoiler things I wanted to mention that I really liked, that I thought worked really well. So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts were, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast or the Punch Like a Girl podcast, both available on iTunes and Stitcher. And until next time, this council is adjourned.